Welcome, friends, to the Play Guitar Podcast. I'm Lee, and I'm here to help you become the guitar player that you always wanted to be. Episode 384? We're getting close to 400. What should we do? What should we do for 400? I don't know. I'm starting to think about it. We're going to do something. We're going to celebrate. We're going to do something special. Today, we're talking about getting your aimless guitar solos together. Do you do that? Do you play aimless guitar solos? Well, if you do, guess what? You are not alone. There's a lot of us dealing with this stuff. And I happen to have a ton of experience helping frustrated guitar players create solos that actually communicate to the listener. If you start to think about it that way, I need what I'm playing to communicate. Instead of I need it to be flashy, or I need to play this entire scale, or I need to do this or that or whatever. It needs to communicate. It needs to get a point across, right? Think about it when you listen to your own favorite solo. It makes you feel something. It's communicating to you. And being able to communicate, you can communicate with one or two notes. Ask my coaching students. We go through that. How do you do that, right? One or two notes, and you can get it across. You can get the emotion that you want to get across. You can get the the color of the song. All of sorts of different things that you can get across just with one or two notes. So you're in good hands today if this is your problem. And I'm going to go ahead and get to the fixing of these problems. This is a top 10 list episode. There's a lot of them. A lot of top 10 episodes. So this one is my top 10 easy fixes for your aimless guitar solos. This week, usually what happens in these podcasts is I have my coaching. I do coaching sessions on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Then Sunday, I prepare for the next week, which is what I'm doing now. And usually what happens, I don't know everyone out there that listens to this, but I do know my coaching students. And usually the topics that I talk about from week to week, it's an endless stash of ideas coming from my students. And one of these is getting easy fixes for your solos, something that you can do. And actually the lesson for today was about syncopation. This is one of them. Syncopation, not playing your strong notes always on beat 1 and always on beat 3, right? Offsetting them, playing them on an off beat. You can take a regular old boring lick and move them to different times. We're dealing with time here. Move them and create something that's very effective. Creates anticipation, creates tension and release. Really cool stuff from a simple lick you already know, just manipulating it in a different way. But that's one of these easy fixes that we're going to talk about today. And it's about, as you are about to see, none of these are intensive. You don't have to do years of skill work to sound great with these things. Take the skills you have, approach them in an easy musical way, and you will get great results, predictably. And that's the one thing about guitars, when you play, it's all about hope, right? This is being predictable. We all default to working harder when there's a problem. Well, there's a problem. I don't sound the way I want to. Well, I'm just going to work harder. I'm just going to get down. I'm going to practice my scales more. Maybe if I practice these scales over and over and over again, maybe it would happen that way. With guitar solos, that's missing the point. You can know these scales backwards and forwards and still not know how to use them to communicate with them. Playing more notes, learning more theory, working on faster technique. These are all good things. They're all noble things to do, but they don't fix the problem that most people can't put their finger on, the core problem. It's a communication problem. All you are is just more efficient at not communicating. You'll be a master at missing the point. When I'm done with these, though, I'd ask for you to take a minute, think about the songs and the guitar solos that you love, and see if you can recognize any of these 10 fixes in them. And I'm excited to hear how today's podcast actually changed your playing. So if this changes your playing, please get in touch with me. You can go over to playguitaracademy.com, send me a message. It will be fantastic. I would love it. The biggest change you will see in your guitar playing is by changing your thinking. Remember that. Okay. So, and if you're here listening to the podcast, you already know that right there. So the number one, what's the number one thing? Start with number one, outlining the chords. We talk about that all the time. Outlining the chords keeps the solo grounded in the harmony, right? So the harmony is the chords that are going by. You've all heard it. Someone's playing scales up and down, and there's chords behind it, and they don't match. They don't sync. They don't gel together. It's like two different things going on, and it doesn't sound really cohesive, right? So how do you do that? How do you have to know what the chords are. The chords have notes in them. Those happen to be the strong notes, and your solos have notes in them. Some of those notes in your solos are strong notes and some are weak notes. The more that you can connect the strong notes, the more inside, the more solid your note choices are going to be. But you don't want that all the time. You do that, you're going to sound like you're playing bugle music. You know, you're just playing arpeggios all the time. We need to know how to connect these lines. So paying attention to the chords, number one thing that you can do. Number two, the next is phrasing in sentences. Okay, so phrasing, the way that we chop down these musical ideas, in the way that you chop down sentences. You wouldn't just go on and 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 on without a period every once in a while. So a solo should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And throughout, you have different ideas that link to each other. One idea here, then the next idea here, the next idea here. It almost comes off like a conversation. A lot of times when I'm playing a lead, I'll play, say I just want to do a simple, say that's my little lick there. That is a self-contained idea. It ended with on a root note. Bam, done. I'd start off with a bend up to the fifth, and I have a minor third, and then a root bouncing off of the flat seventh, right? Some very strong notes in this. It's A minor pentatonic. But what if I created a conversation with this? So a lot of conversations will have questions and answers. So what if I didn't hit the root note a few times, right? So the first two times I didn't end on a strong note. I had a little bend there. I didn't end on the root note those first two times, but the second two times I did. You could think of that as two questions and two answers right there. It's going back and forth. We have something that's left in the air that needs to be responded to, and something that responds to it and finishes the idea. And then you move on. That's phrasing in sentences. Pretty neat stuff. How about number three? Number three, be repetitive. Oh, gosh, isn't that bad? If you repeat yourself over and over and over again, isn't that bad? Think about what you're listening to. Think about the song that you're listening to. So let's say, what's the average song? Used to be 3 minutes and 15 seconds, right? Of repetition. You've got the intro chords. Usually those chords come from maybe the chorus or the verse. Then you got verse 1. What happens after verse 1? Verse 2, same thing, over and again. We're repeating. Then we've got a chorus. Okay, that's a little different. It's a little stronger, right? What's next? Maybe another verse. Repetition. Then another chorus. Repetition. At this point, we've had as much repetition as a regular person can handle before they tune out. What happens now? A B section. Maybe a guitar solo. Maybe a bridge. Something different right there. keep your interest. And so that's new, and you're listening to that. And then what ends up happening, you're like, well, what were those other parts in the song I was listening to again? Bam, back to the chorus or back to that first verse. It's repetition, right? So repetition is not a bad thing. Repetition is a good thing. We respond to repetition, but you have to have it in the sweet spot. Too much repetition and people tune out. Not enough repetition and it doesn't gel for people. So be repetitive, maybe calls and responses. So I just did that in that lick. There's two. So I took the idea from before, from our repetition, number 2, and I repeated that 2 times, and I repeated the little question part 2 times. But I decided now it's getting a little too repetitive. I need to add a little. That instead of bending from the 4th to the 5th, I took a flat 7th and bent that all the way up to the root. So it was a repetitive phrase, but I did little things in it to keep people's interest there. It's a powerful thing. Repetition, and also developing a motif. Developing something that sounds familiar, but continues on, adds a little bit to it. If you ever notice, listen to one of your favorite songs and listen to the first verse and the second verse. There's the same thing, same chords, but usually there's something different on verse 2 to bring it up a little bit. Maybe it could be, a shaker or a little bit of tambourine. That's what they used to do, or something different. Maybe the guitar plays it a little bit different. The rhythms are changed or something like that. But even though it's a repetitive thing, there's something new to listen to on there, developing that motif. And that being said, leads us over to number 4. Number 4 is slow down. Smell the roses, right? There's a certain thing that I'm trying to get to with this. And what that is, when a lot of people have aimless soloing, they have spent all of this time learning their patterns across the fretboard, and they feel like they need to play them, and they need to play them all. They need to go from low all the way up to high, and then maybe go up to the next pattern, go all the way back down, and the next pattern all the way back up, and play them fast, and then maybe bend a note, but then get back to playing fast again and go up and down, and eventually playing in the patterns that they've learned up high on the fretboard, up and down with that too. And you're breezing past the good stuff, right? In one octave. If I'm just playing scales and going, I've just breezed past all sorts of goodness in this lower octave. All the ideas that I just came up with, and I restricted myself to playing slow and playing in this one octave space. In that amount of time, I could have been all over the fretboard, right? But it's kind of like, I said this to a coaching student lately, it's kind of like you're on a highway and you're looking for some cool place to eat, but you never stop. Well, I'm going 70 miles an hour. Look, there's a little town right there, but it's too late. I'm past that. We're breezing past these little gems, these little nuggets of great music by just flying up and down scale patterns. The intervals are all right there in one octave. All the sounds that you need are in one octave, and you can combine them to play them in different ways. You're going to explore how intervals work when you restrict yourself. And slowing down means you can get a little bit better emotional impact, as well as it gives you time to think about what you're playing and some time to listen to what you're playing instead of trying to spending all of that time, the worry about playing scale patterns is like air in a balloon. It fills all of your consciousness up, right? So, number five is using punctuation. I touched on this a little bit earlier. When we talked about speaking in sentences, right? So what makes something sound like a sentence? Well, you have a noun, you have a verb, you have the adjectives, adverb, all that kind of stuff. But what lets you know it's a sentence? Punctuation. It's over. I said that. What do you think about it? Or now I'm ready to say something else. We're putting together little nuggets of melody. In that, what I just played, in my mind, there were commas, there were periods, there were exclamation points in all of that. And I used strong notes, chord tones. I used rests. I broke up the lines that I was playing and took an idea and developed it and developed it and developed it and maybe put it up in the air and asked the question for a minute and then developed it even farther from that there. So using strong notes as punctuation. Don't just play solo in on any old note. Ending on a strong note is going to happen, but you can also start on a strong note too. There's many different ways that you can feature the notes in the chords that you're playing, and that's going to change your playing. I know a lot of you listen to this and you might say, well, I'm not that far along yet. That's okay. You're hearing me say, look, when you are to the point where you're making guitar solos up, when you're writing songs and making melodies for your songs, the same thing. Or you're playing bass and you're writing a bass line, Chris, right? If you're writing a bass line, these things are all important. And even if you're not there yet, I'm pointing you in the direction. This is one of the places where people get stuck and they spin their wheels. They try to make solos that sound good and they don't have a point to them. So making these short phrases, putting punctuation at the end of them, paying attention to what that strong note is, what's that last note in this little phrase before you move on to the next one. It's going to be very important. And when you are there, you'll go to the front of the line when you're there, because you'll know what the most important thing is. Rests. Number 6, not playing. Not playing. If you're one of those people who loves their scale patterns, love them. I love them. I deal with scale patterns every day. Been doing it forever, right? I love to play those notes. But if I play too many of them in a row, guess what happens? People tune out. And guess what? I tune out. I stop listening to what I'm playing and I start paying attention to what would be the next gymnastics that I could pull off here. Silence is just as important as the notes that you play. What can you do with silence? Well, let's see here. Each one of those little rests, those little bits of silence was building what? You heard it. It was building anticipation. What's coming next? What's coming next? He's taking me somewhere. I don't know which way he's going to go. And this one was. I was working my way up to the strong note here. I could have just as easily worked my way back down. I could any direction that I could go. Creating anticipation, giving some breathing room in your solo is very important. You want to start to sound pro. Don't play as much. When you do play, make it important. But in between those important things, give some space. Try it. Try it this week. Try when you sit down with your guitar next time. Try adding in some space on purpose and see what happens. Number 7, Dynamics. What are dynamics? We're electric guitar players or acoustic guitar players with big heavy strings with pickups. They go, we don't need no stinking dynamics, right? What are dynamics? How loud and soft something is played. And the changes in volume, even the changes in tone, attack. These things are incredibly important. They communicate. If you played something like this, or something like this, same notes. They say two completely different things. They communicate in two totally different ways, right? So also building. These things are expressive and they're easy to change. You can just make a point to do it. You can just say, I'm going to use a scale pattern and I'm going to start low and quiet. And then as I build, I'm going to get louder and louder and louder. And it builds drama really to that. Number 8, easy things that you can use to get rid of aimless solos, vocal articulations, trying to sound like a voice. That's why we do all this stuff, because people are programmed to respond to the voice. So when we hear someone play, listen to a Joe Satriani completely, sounds like that is a vocal sound on purpose. That's the DiMarzio pickup. Is it Fred? I think it is. I forget the name of it, but it has a vocal sound to it, right? But also not just tone, vibrato. That comes from the voice. It happens naturally. Bends. Swooping up into notes. That comes from the voice. Slides. The voice, we can take a note and seamlessly go up to it. The guitar doesn't seamlessly do that unless you have a slide. It will go up in steps, but still, that's from the voice. Rakes. It's like a growl into that. Imitating vocal techniques give you more expressive solos, hands down. One of the things that every guitar player should take, they should take a week and pay attention to their vibrato. I've been purposefully using a wider vibrato lately because I've been listening to the music that I like. I've been listening to a lot of Jeff Beck, who has a very wide vibrato, and I'm trying to emulate some of that in my own playing. And then I'll go back and listen and see, well, was I right? Does that match me or not? But these all come from the voice. Number 9, complementing the rhythm. Paying attention when you're playing over a backing track, when you're playing with the band. Sync your solo to something that you're hearing. It could be the rhythm guitar player. It could be the bass player. It could be the drums. It could be the hi-hat. Listen for rhythms that are already there and emulate them in your playing. You don't have to do them exactly the same, but complement those, right? Demonstrate how rhythm changes your solo so that you're not just not paying attention to the band. When I'm listening to the lead guitar player and I'm listening to the rhythm guitar player and I'm listening to the drums and we're listening to the whole thing. But when you're playing, a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, a lot of people aren't even listening to anything. They're paying so much attention to their fretboard, they're not hearing what they're playing. So if there was a if there was a 16th note groove, slow, I might go 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1. So then every once in a while I wouldn't. Every once in a while I let a note ring. But I would go back and forth. I would play a little bit of what the song was giving me, some of those rhythms, and a little bit of me improvising rhythms over top of that. And the last, number 10, most important skill, I touched on it just a minute ago, listening. Listen to yourself. Listen to the band. Listen to the song. If you have a hard time listening while you're playing, record yourself and listen back later while you're not playing. Listening is the most important thing. Have you ever heard a band that just blew you away? They weren't playing particularly difficult songs, but something about the chemistry of the group. I think about Dave Matthews Band. If you ever see them live, go to YouTube and pick any live Dave Matthews Band. They're all looking at each other. They're all listening to what each other's playing. They're smiling. They're present. They're in the moment. It's so easy for us as guitar players to detach, shoegaze, right? To pay so much attention about what we're doing that we're not paying attention to everything else. When you listen, what happens? You get ideas. You may have had one idea of how this was going to go, and then your drummer does something really, really cool, and it gives you an idea. Well, do I do that or not? Do I play that idea? I don't know. Well, let's try a little bit of it. Oh, and then the bass player hears what you just played, and that changes the way he's playing or she's playing their part. So now someone was playing the regular old song and they did something different. One of the other players heard it. It changed what they were playing, which in turn made one of the other players pay attention, and that changed what they were playing to match. And now everybody's playing a different thing. They're creating music in the moment by listening to others. Incredibly important. And it's something that you can practice. It's something that's actually easy to do. Take some of these other things. Take a rest, right? And sit and listen to what's going on in the music that you're playing. You're going to have an epiphany. You're going to have one of those light bulb moments that, you know what? All these little things, these 10 little things that Lee talked about today, I could just do one of them and it's going to take my playing up a notch. I could do 2 of them and that far. You're going to enjoy what you're doing more if you realize you don't have to shred all of the time. You can create music that is communicating, that's important, that's relative, with a small amount of information, as long as you do it correctly and follow some of the 10 ideas that I gave to you today. If you have not got this yet, the Big 4 scale pattern worksheet, I would suggest that you do. There's a lot of scales out there. There's a lot of modes. There's a lot of different ways that you should do, learn all of these things. But if you listen to the music that we all grew up with, that seems to be the music that most people are listening to still today, 99.9% of them use one of the Big 4 scale patterns: major, minor, major pentatonic, and minor pentatonic. And having them all in one place, in one key, so you can see them and you get used to going back and forth between them, master these. It's a very good worksheet to have. It's something that actually is in my brain right now that I put on paper. This is what I'm thinking when I'm playing. I've got all these are my colors that I can choose from. I have it for free for you. It's over at Big 4 Scale Pattern worksheet over at playguitaracademy.com /Big 4 Scale worksheet. But I would recommend clicking the link in the description. Take you right over there. Or just go to Play Guitar Academy. It's on the front page. You can grab that and get your scales sounding awesome. Okay, that was a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed numbers 1 through 10. And I'm going to call it that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast. Make sure to hit the button below and subscribe to the show. And if you've benefited from this podcast, a review would be awesome. That's the best way to make sure we get this very valuable content. Over Apple Podcasts is the best place to leave a review to more guitar players around the world. And if more help and structure and results in your guitar playing sound good to you, you should become a member of the Academy. Membership has a lot of advantages right now. 1, I have the roadmap that takes you from beginner to advanced guitar player. We hit on all of the main points, all the things that you need to know to be able to be playing songs and coming up with ideas for effortlessly. And in these are sessions that I was used to teaching for group guitar classes. So all of the questions that were given to me in those classes, I put those into the roadmap videos. They're really important. And we have a lot of people that are working their way through them. It's very helpful for them. And you can get that just for being a member. You get access to all of them. But one of the best things is all of these lesson videos, like today I did syncopated guitar lines, blues guitar lines. You can go over to the Academy and just scroll down, and all of the backing tracks, all of the guitar profiles, all of the tablature PDFs, they're all there for you for every one of my lesson videos there. So there's a lot and there's a lot more in there too. But also, members can hang out with me every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Ask any questions that you need, and get a little teaching, get a little group class going on there too. Okay, so that's over at playguitaracademy.com. And I am so happy to spend my time with you today. And thank you for inviting me into your podcast player. I'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.